The following podcast is an enticing media production. Thank you for listening to this podcast. You are now socially obligated to pour yourself a drink, and welcome to the Drunk Squirrel.
All right, so we're recording, Rob.
I'm deeply disappointed in you, Kenny.
Why?
Well, I mean, this is like a true drunk squirrel first that we're having right here.
I was going to mention that, but go ahead. You did already.
Yeah, this is the Pantsless podcast,
Oh,
and you just like turned the video off on this and made sure that no one gets to see any of the. Whoops! I stood up without my pants on.
my video's on.
Your video's on. We can see each other, but none of the scurry gets to see the. Whoops! I forgot to wear pants for this.
We're not sharing all this nasty. Deb's looks beautiful as always, but we're not sharing us with the rest of the world. They're not ready for that.
Yeah, we have been paid to keep our stuff off of OnlyFans.
That's right. That's how,
primarily by our wives.
That's how we make money. But Rob, where I thought you were going with this is a first, though. This is the first time that we are recording the Drunk Squirrel when you and I are not in the same room.
And it's all through Zoom.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is a first. Now, we do all have different drinks because we're all in different locations.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're pantsless. Depends on how you felt about that back in 2020 in the Zoom age.
Keep your camera neck up, Rob. Neck up.
Neck up.
So, Rob, bourbon?
I'm having bourbon.
Good. All right.
Or
cool.
Wheat whiskey, whatever you want to call it.
Wheat whiskey. Almost the same thing, but not exactly.
And we have a guest. This is another one that you need to introduce because this is the first time I have met her. But you have known her for 3 years, 2 years?
2 years.
Almost 3 years.
Yeah. Well, it's 2 years. Nell's known her a bit longer.
And you've been a guest on past podcasts with Nell, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. So anyway, so we are going to bring in our guest. This is the lovely Deborah Bassett that is joining us tonight. Deborah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And I have to apologize for my voice because I had a little cold. And so I have a little bit of a huskier voice than usual, but I'll do my best not to cough during our interview. I think I'll be okay. I am drinking some delicious hibiscus tea that I made myself yesterday. And I have to say, I'm really feeling quite well, bouncing back from this cold in just 48 hours.
That's awesome because you never know how quickly you're going to bounce back from these kind of things.
Well, I usually don't, to be honest, which is why I take it really seriously. And as soon as I feel myself coming down with something, I do cancel everything for the next 48 hours and hit the bed and, drink lots of good herbal tea and water. But I usually suffer a lot longer, but I'm happy to say, and it might be all the yoga I've been doing. But yeah, it's I'm back in action. So 48 hours later.
Good. So you said it's a hibiscus herbal tea. Is that right?
Yeah. I make it fresh with dried hibiscus flowers. I do some herbalism on the side and steep that, and then I added some red clover flowers too. Just lots of good anti-inflammatory properties there. And I do add a lot of sugar to it because hibiscus is really tart. And it's kind of a really popular drink in some Spanish-speaking countries as a cold hibiscus tea that's very sweet. It's very refreshing. So, yeah.
So is that an herbal recipe you're willing to share with us so we can put that
absolutely
out there in the email?
You certainly can. So it's dried hibiscus flowers. You can get them in health food stores or online or your favorite. I recommend your favorite natural foods store if you have something like that. Most places do, and they're fairly popular, so they're pretty easy to find. And it just takes about a quarter cup of the hibiscus flowers. Let them steep in either hot water or cold water. Hot water for 15 minutes or longer. Cold water overnight, and it just gives this gorgeous bright red color. So when you see that the infusion is that beautiful bright red, you know it's ready. And then you can either add other things to it. Some people like to add lime. You might be tempted to add something alcoholic, and that's totally your choice. But I recommend adding a lot of sugar because it is a very, very tart flavor. And unless you like that, and some people do, but try it also with a sweet way because it just is a delicious flavor. It's very cooling, calming, has anti-inflammatory properties. You didn't realize this was going to be about herbalism.
This is why we said before we started recording, the conversation goes where it goes, and we love it.
It goes where it goes. So yeah, I had started an herbalism program during COVID actually, and I grew a lot of fresh herbs. In fact, I have a pharmacopoeia of dried herbs. And for 2 years, I made special concoctions for friends and family who were sick, along with my son, and we delivered those to people. I'm happy to say they worked.
I was going to say, I've heard stories that they work quite well.
Yeah, they were so amazing that people were reaching out to me wanting the formula, and I had to be honest and tell them, I don't know, because I do it intuitively.
Yeah.
My son and I did it intuitively. We picked what we felt right about in our garden. It was a really magical time. You know, a lot of interesting things happened during that time, and that was one of them. So yeah, I can't tell you what was in them. It was different for every person.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And it's cool you included Louis in that too, because I'm sure he enjoyed that as well.
Oh, he loved it. Well, he was very young, you know, and young children are very intuitive, you know, before we kind of get a hold of them and fill their heads full of video games and social media and peer pressure and school, frankly. I mean, I know school is important, but it was prior to all of that. So he was still very very open to nature and very intuitive, and we would pick the herbs together and make the preparations together.
Yeah.
And then we would pray over it together.
That's
and
cool.
then we would deliver it to whoever needed it. And yeah, it was really it was a wonderful thing. But I decided not to complete the certificate in herbalism for lots of reasons, including I couldn't ever see myself selling it. It was a gift. Kenny, you know me well enough to know that to not be surprised by that.
I know.
How old is your son?
He will be 11 in October.
Okay. He's a little bit younger than my daughter.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, that was so COVID, that was about second grade for my daughter, Adeline. That would have been, I guess, around first grade.
First grade. And actually because of that, he did first grade at home. And we wrote a book together, and we're actually still selling copies of it. It's called Allow to Zigzag.
How did I not know that?
I don't know. It's sort of a big deal. I mean, it is sort of a big deal in mine and Louie's lives. We made a 26-piece series of single prints, one for each letter of the alphabet, and it's a little art show that we've shown in Panama City and Mobile and Pensacola. I actually just retired it because Louis said he'd moved on to other things and he didn't even want to go to the openings. I mean, he just, you know, he had moved past it, and I had to respect that. I think too, what he was trying to say is that he wanted to move past COVID as well. And so I understand. Yeah, so I totally understood that. But we do have a beautiful book. We still have some copies left. And we sell them every market here in Studio 228 in the historic Sacred Heart Hospital. We'll get to all that. But
we're definitely going to get to that.
We have 2 art markets a month, and he really likes sitting at the table and selling them. And he sold 4 copies on Sunday. I mean, you know, it's a great little book.
He's the perfect salesman too, right? I mean, yeah,
he gets really excited.
Louis is excited about something like that. And like, if Rob, you haven't met Louis, but he's very infectious, and he's like an adult. When you walk into the room, he walks over and he shakes your hand and he introduces himself. Like, I mean, what child does that?
Yeah,
that's a pretty good sign. I mean,
it's very cool.
That shows some respect.
A former college professor as a mother. Yeah, I mean, he is more comfortable He even said it to me recently. He's so comfortable around adults that sometimes it's challenging to be around kids. And I had to explain to him, you just got to lower the level of discourse. I hate to say it that way, but you can't
Yeah.
really talk about some of the more, complicated subjects. Most 10-year-olds aren't into it.
I get that. I get that.
So he's
All right,
learning. He's learning.
I want to draw something out. You said you were a college professor.
Formerly in another life. Yeah.
I mean, I gotta, if it's okay, I gotta ask. I mean, how did you
Yeah.
get from being a college professor to a hobbyist herbalist, radio station host, a radio station owner? I mean,
Yeah, I know
that's
all
a
the
big
things.
leap.
It's a big leap. Well, I'm in my 50s, Rob. I know it's a shocker. But
I know, I'm shocked.
oh,
That's younger than Kenny.
so sweet. But yeah, I was a research scientist in Seattle, and I was teaching at the college level. I made a big change back in, oh, let me think back to when it was, I guess 2012, 2011, 2012. I'd been in Seattle for 10 years. I just sort of intuitively realized I wanted to be back on the East Coast. So I spent some time in Philadelphia. And I eventually made my way to New Orleans, and I was teaching at Tulane. But I did teach briefly at Temple. I was a visiting scholar at University of Pennsylvania, in the Annenberg School. And I just, things were changing in the academic world pretty significantly. And I was questioning a lot of just the general direction of my research. And I worked on some really large medical research teams. I'm a social scientist, but I loved the research. It was my area of expertise was Native American, American Indian health, and doing a lot of interviews and focus groups, and the kind of work I really enjoy. But I became really frustrated with how long it was taking for the research to get into the hands of people who could do something to change the way things were. And that's about 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And that's about normal. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, 10 years later, I'm still having my research published. And so that's about right.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, it's
impressive.
cool in one way, but in another way, as someone who really liked to see or feel that my work was making a difference, or the stories that were being shared with me, many of them very heartbreaking, that those stories meant something, that they were being heard and they were going to the right places so that we could have some policy change and make some changes in the healthcare system. And anyway, there's a lot to talk about there, and I won't go into all of that except to say that there is a connection between that training and my former work as a researcher and as a college professor who taught cultural communication. So a lot of intercultural theory and basically how do we improve the ability to understand each other, regardless of where we've been and where we're coming from, what we believe and value. Can we identify those things we share that bring us together? And I think we can. So all of that has led to this. Absolutely.
That's a wild transition from that to radio, obviously. And
Yeah.
we'll get into that a little bit, but to sing your praises just a little bit, if I may. So when you have a conversation with you, Debs, it's always, you can just tell the subject that you're speaking on, you're very passionate about it and you're very knowledgeable about it. And it's unlike conversations with most people where they just, you have conversations with them and you can tell they don't really know what they're speaking on. And when you have conversations on a topic with you can tell immediately that you know what you're speaking about and you're very passionate about your stance on whatever it is you're speaking about. And I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, Kenny. Thank you. I appreciate you. And I would say ditto, baby. Because,
I
I
mean,
when
you're
you
a lot
really
smarter than me, but
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh,
When
I do.
you, well, it might interest you to know I still have student loans. I mean, how smart is that? I mean, it's
Well, I mean,
If you were teaching at a college level, I'm assuming you have a doctorate
I
or
do. I have a
pretty
PhD.
close to.
Yeah, I have a PhD in communication from the University of Washington, and
Yeah,
those
you
were
just
wonderful,
outclassed all
wonderful
of us.
years.
So
Oh, honey, I mean, again, I still have student loans. All right, so how
so do
classy?
I.
How classy is that?
You are like the rest of us out there who are just going, was my education worth it? And no, I am not making enough for this anyway.
Well, there are people in my, how shall we say, familial circle who were wondering what happened to her. What in the world is she doing? But I mean, it's not that far afield. I was an international journalist before going to grad school. In the back when that was a thing.
Okay, you were an international journalist?
Yeah, I know it's
Wow.
crazy.
What did you
I
cover?
This is what happens. This is what happens, my young friends, when you have 5 decades behind you. You really do fill them with, lots of different experiences and careers and such. But I will say, I mean, I spent some time in Israel and Italy. I took a freighter across the Atlantic. I wrote about that. That was awesome. But yeah, all of that has led me to where I am now. And I do really want to talk about where I am now because I've never been happier.
Yeah.
And I never would have dreamed I would be here ever.
Absolutely. Sorry, it's always interesting hearing people's stories. And, there is the moment we're in, but how you got there. I I sit with that all the time in my work where it's okay, sitting down, connecting with people, hearing how they got to the point that they are. There are some phenomenal stories I've heard and been a part of and seen. So it's fascinating to hear them, to see the journey that was, this is the best version of me right now that
Yeah.
you're sitting with because of everything I've gone through in the past. So that's my amazement and my wonder as you have shared where you started and how you're where you're at now. So the, let's be fair. Let's go ahead. Tell us, how did you get into radio
That was good.
from
Oh my goodness.
from
Well, I mean, I have to.
going
I
on a
have.
freighter to being a doctor to how are you in
Oh, I'm
radio?
sorry. I don't mean to be throwing all this at you guys. I will warn you that when I've had a head cold, it makes, for whatever reason, it makes me especially like open, and I'm just like, there's just no filter.
There's no filter needed for the drunk squirrel, and you can just, by the way, you can also swear if you need to.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The F
So
word is my favorite. I
don't
mean,
hold back. We have the explicit button for a reason.
I love it. Well, I mean, I remember Pete Perez's interview with y'all, and he certainly didn't hold back, and probably should have. But anyway, I have to give
We heard
credit.
you in the background yelling at him.
In all seriousness, I have to give credit to my amazing parents because Jamie and Daniel, my dad Daniel's no longer with us in this realm, but my mom Jamie is. She's down in Central Florida, and they were just, I don't know if the term Jesus freaks means anything to you. It's not a pejorative term. It was hippies for Jesus. And they were
Church
really
ministry, I get it.
yeah, they were very counterculture, and they lived on communes and kibbutzim and you know things like that, and they really they showed us that from a very young age, an alternative way that was counterculture. It didn't work out for them being in a commune. They never could find their place in that world. They weren't that counterculture, if you know what I mean. And they were trying to figure out their place in that. But I feel like just the fact that they tried, and that they showed us that that was a possibility. For me, I really did grow up thinking, feeling, believing, and I still do, that anything was possible. And that's been very healthy for me. I think that's maybe what has made the difference. I sat down with someone for dinner in Boston who I haven't seen since, and they mentioned taking a freighter, and I thought, wow, I never thought of that.
Hmm.
So I immediately looked into it and did it. And so many people told me it was crazy, and that there were, um, it was dangerous. And I have to say, these days I wouldn't do it. I think it is very dangerous, these days. But those days, maybe being young, maybe it was less dangerous.
Yeah.
It was pre 9/11 and all that, so it was a different world. But yeah, just things like that, in while I was working as a journalist, and newspapers started crumbling, I thought, well, I'll go to business school. So I wandered into business school, and I had a conversation. It went really well. And then just for fun, I went into the journalism department because I was already working as a journalist, right? But I thought, well, maybe I'll get a master's in journalism, and that might be interesting. And the head of the department right then and there offered me basically a full ride. And I said, well, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I'd already made up my mind to go to business school. Right. And so what seems like very sort of whimsical or spur of the moment or unplanned decisions, I've come to realize were in fact perfect, very
Yeah.
intentional. You want a gift from God, the universe pointing me in the right direction, whatever. But I've always been open to that. I've been open to say, okay, yeah, I had decided to go to business school while I'm writing out this change in the economy, the newspaper industry changing, and we didn't know at that time what it would look like afterwards. The internet journalism or online news was
Yeah.
just coming onto the scene, right? And so that was a really big, giant shift, and we didn't know what that would look like. Which is why, I decided to get a master's in journalism.
I
But
mean,
anyway, while I
t-
was there, I had a professor who sat me down and said, "Listen, you need to get a doctorate." And I was
that's
like, "Sure,
you're
that
like,
sounds good too."
I love how you're just like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
I mean, I did not come from a family of academics,
Yeah.
right? So none of that made any sense to me at all. I didn't even really know what a PhD was. What I did know was I really enjoyed research.
Hmm.
And as a master's student, I was going to conferences and presenting my research. I liked that. It was fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just kind of, and I have to give the credit to my parents because, their attitude was, okay, yeah, that's a great opportunity that just popped up. Why not? Let's explore that. Let's go live on a commune in Germany and see what that feels like.
I mean, as you mentioned earlier, you said hippie earlier, and
Yeah.
it's not a derogatory term at all.
No.
It's like, but that's very much a hippie vibe. Like, just kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
And it's very cool, and it's a way of life that not a lot of people can relate to.
Well, I have learned that, Kenny. It can be alienating to people, and I don't mean it to be. I just I don't I did also grow up without watching TV, and I was homeschooled for much of my life, which is kind of funny.
Hmm.
I did end up going to high school in Tel Aviv, Israel, and I graduated from there. Another story, I know. But all of those things that removed me and my siblings from kind of mainstream culture, and also living overseas, like it just sort of blows your mind in a good way, right?
Hmm.
And you kind of
Yeah,
realize,
you're being exposed to the world,
yeah, and you
unfiltered,
kind of realize
unchecked. It's
this whole structure, like we made this shit up,
Yeah.
all of it.
It, it,
We,
100%.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
if you think about it, I think this a lot, to be honest with you, when we're watching things that are going on in the world, and we're on a very small level, we were Nell and I, we watch a lot of YouTube. We're on YouTube, but we watch a lot of YouTube, And a lot of the people that we watch on YouTube, some of the folks were just in Mexico, so they crossed the border in an RV that they built
Yeah.
themselves, and they're kind of going through Mexico and the differences of sort of just how things are, and the terrain isn't any different from where they crossed the border to the other side of the border, and all these things, and I'm like, where did we get these borders? Like
I
we,
know.
like we as people created these. Like, I don't understand why there's a difference from one side of this line to the other. It makes no sense. It honestly makes zero sense. The
Yeah.
people aren't any different. They're the same people, whether you're on this side of the line or that side of the line. And
Yeah,
it's
it's really
wild.
shocking. I
It
mean,
is.
I've made that drive a few times, and especially driving through El Paso and Western Texas, you can just look right over and see the border and see the little shanty towns right there
It's just
on the side of
amazing.
the road. And it's just shocking. But yeah, I mean, indigenous people, we call this continent Turtle Island. So, I mean, we made up all this stuff, borders and countries and nations and flags and stuff. It's
Yeah.
I feel to me it's mostly nonsense. And again, that's not always popular to say.
It's almost all
Um,
nonsense, to be honest with you. I mean,
yeah,
it really is. Like, you're supposed to be different because you're on one side of a line that's drawn on a map. Why? I mean,
yeah,
by the way, I will say I just saw you walking around the office there, and it
yeah.
made me kind of miss the space a little bit. Honestly,
Oh, well,
I
the
saw the
space misses
refrigerator
you.
and all of that. So,
The space misses you, and it misses Nell. And
I
Rob, you're welcome here too.
so
But
so
yeah,
yeah. So Rob, radio is not dead is happening at
Again,
the end of January, beginning of February next year,
that's right.
and
We would love for you to come.
I mean, I realize you might have to drive in a car because you're afraid that you're going to crash and burn, but it's okay.
I have said if we do another Florida trip, we're going to try and fly that one.
I can hold your hand during takeoff if you like.
Well, look,
Oh,
Rob,
Kenny, you're going to have to hold a lot more than my hand. I mean, you're going to have to, full on spoon me, man.
honey, I'm with you. I refuse to fly. I have not flown in 10 years.
I saw a plane crash as a kid that did me in a 747 in Pittsburgh. I'm out.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. I mean, I try not to say too much around Kenny and Nell because I know they fly all the time and love it, but I loathe flying. And I mean, I say that on the one hand, I do. On the other hand, there's no better feeling than being in the air.
Well,
I,
it gets us to Pensacola very quickly,
It does.
so I don't
you
hate it.
can't beat the times.
I don't hate it that much.
It's because I used to fly overseas back and forth a lot and across the country a lot. It was always an ordeal for me. I had all my rituals, my
Mhm.
face tapping, all the things to calm myself. It was really very, yeah. I feel sorry for whoever got to sit next to me. Except I would end up having these amazing conversations with whoever sat next to me.
That's what
And
we
many
do
times,
here, Debs.
I mean, many times I would end up comforting someone who, for whatever reason, God thought it was funny to put somebody afraid of flying next to me. I would end up comforting them and telling them what they could do to get through it. And then at some point, invariably, especially on a overnight flight, I would make my peace with God. Every time. I'm like, okay, there's nothing here. I can't get on the phone. Like all of my support systems are, gone. It's just me and the plane and God. And then you reach that like peaceful meditative moment where you're like, I surrender it all.
That
I know flying probably isn't that serious for you.
I mean, there was a time when it was because it was very new to me too. At one point, now it's just like a way to get to places that I want to be and a way
Yeah.
to get to people that I want to be with. So
Yeah.
now it's just like
Yeah.
that's what it
It's
is.
very, very, very convenient. And I
Yeah.
love it the way you guys share those experiences with the rest of us. Your videos are something I get up at 4 to watch. Anytime there's a new Kenny and Nell video, I gotta see it. Yeah, such good stuff. But yeah, Rind, radio's not dead. So however you get here, Rob, I've made that drive a few times, but back and forth from Pennsylvania. It can be done. But we'll have our 5-day Festival of Live Radio from January 29th to February 2nd, 2025. You can check out radiosnotdead.org.
But
Yes.
Debs, you need to make another drive from Pensacola to Pennsylvania at some point. I know you're busy, but someday you have to visit.
I will.
Okay.
I will. And we actually, funnily enough, Janet lives up in Cape Cod. And we've talked about having her show her work here, and she would have to have it driven down. She does these big wooden bowls that she carves out of reclaimed wood. They're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about driving up there maybe in March and caravanning with you guys. We promised her.
We can make this a party.
I mean, that's what I'm feeling. And then we all drive back, bring the bulls, have her show.
Yeah.
I don't know. We probably need to sell everything so that we don't have to drive it back up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I could need to sell my house so I don't need to work anymore. That might be a good thing because all these things require all this. I just need to end up down in Pensacola, apparently.
Well, you really do, Kenny. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie, honey, that Flip Flops and Beer, like that's a full-time gig. And you could be doing that out of here. And you saw some of that when you were here with those musicians coming through. My gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's we're definitely we want to feature your show prominently during Rind, and have more musicians come through. And we'll talk about, of course, we'll talk about off the call how to do that. But I'm not even being funny. There's so much there to be developed.
I feel it. It's on the cusp of something.
Yeah.
I really feel like we could put together a festival of some sort in Pensacola, and I have a laundry list of artists that would come. I mean, I can honestly,
100%.
Honestly tell you that.
I know. I mean, that's something.
Yeah, there's several of them offering just to come here to be on the show on a Wednesday night, and they live in Florida.
Surprised.
I mean, it's
not
unbelievable.
Surprised. Your show is phenomenal.
It's unbelievable.
But look,
what's happening.
Here's the thing. I mean, you have put your heart and soul into this show. And, I've tried to tell people, take the show, we tell everyone, take the show, make it yours. You really took that to heart and just took it to the next level. And it's proof of what can happen. And not to, I'm happy. Pete and I are happy with all of the shows, and we appreciate all of our hosts, but what you've done with Flip Flops and Beer is just a testament to what can be done when you connect with artists in a real way and bring them into the program every week. And look, I know that's a lot of work. All right. That's why I gave up my 3 live shows once we moved into this space, because I knew I would not be able to maintain it anymore at the level that I wanted to maintain it at. And that is, as you know, a lot of communication with the artists, a lot of going through the songs they send you, the tagging and posting. I mean, that's not a 5-minute thing. That takes hours.
It does. So what I will say to all of that, though, is you and Pete have given the space for that and the freedom for that, because there's plenty of internet radio stations out there, right? There's tons of them. You look them up, they're everywhere. But not everybody provides the space to create something that is your own. They create a space that's inside this box,
right?
That they want you to fit into. And that doesn't necessarily work because the host, their personality doesn't come through.
Yeah.
When you're trying to fit inside this box. And so a lot of that comes to the space that you and Pete have created for us to be able to do that. And you can take it wherever you want to. You can do as little work or as much work as you want to. But the space is there and the opportunity is there. So
yeah.
with
And
that,
then the folks who don't want to do, I mean, and I don't think we have anyone on the team like this at the moment, but if someone takes the show and it's just, too much for them, I mean, they will weed themselves out, if that makes sense, right? Just sipping on my hibiscus tea.
I know. I can send you
So-
I can send you hibiscus, by the way. I literally order it by the case.
Really?
Yeah, dried hibiscus flowers. Yes.
I would love that.
I order it like by the 40-pound case from
Oh my goodness.
from a company in California called Whole Herb.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we sell straight hibiscus. Also, use it in herbal blends and things at East Indies. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
I would love some dried hibiscus.
I could send you like a pound of hibiscus or something.
Oh my goodness, I would definitely use it.
All right.
It's very, it has very wonderful properties, anti-inflammatory, I think I mentioned.
Yeah. No, that's
that's
very cool. I could definitely send you some though.
But I appreciate you saying that, Kenny. I have to give full credit to Pete Perez because, he had a background in radio. I did not. I had the background as a journalist and a social scientist and all of those things. I was making music. But, at the time when we met, we were both on a radio station in the UK called First Choice. And I have to give them some credit too, because their model of variety programming and live programming, I mean, that was my introduction to radio. And so that was the bar for me. Pete had a lot of experience in radio, different kinds of stations. He was a DJ for a station that played only house music, for example. And we knew we didn't want to do that. We wanted to do something different. I had early on someone asked me, well, who's your target market? And I was like, oh, let me ask Pete. That's a good question. So I said, Pete, who's our target market? And he didn't even hesitate. He said, everyone. I want everyone listening to us. And I was like, oh, that's a lofty order, but I like it. Okay.
Yeah, I like it. I do like it.
Yeah. So pass that on. It's everyone. Our target market's everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, people, we trust people. And this is really my philosophy in general, managing people or supervising people or working with people, is to find really great people and then let them do what they do.
Oh, God,
and
amen.
get out of their way. And I mean, you can't ask for more than to be surrounded by people who love what they do and are good at it, and just kind of sit back and in fact, in here every day, I feel that way with our amazing yoga teachers, sound healers, musicians, artists. We have some of them coming on board now with their own radio show celebrating community. And I just, I kind of feel like I want to pinch myself every day. Like, wow, I'm often teary-eyed because of the beautiful community we've all co-created together. And I know many of us are far flung. So that's has its own challenges. My dream would be for everyone to be here. But that's not always possible. But that's why something like an annual festival, like our Radio's Not Dead festival, becomes so important. Being that touch point where we can all come together and be together physically, it does make a difference.
Yeah, I mentioned to Nell like all the time, not all the time, but a lot. How we did, the festival went off as it went off, and it was successful, and it was a good time, and it was great for everyone to be together. But that Sunday evening in the hotel lobby of the of the Hyatt at the Pensacola Airport, we were just there, and everybody kind of just let their hair down, so to speak. Some of us have a harder time to let their hair down than others because they don't have any. Are you going to find Pete? Is Pete there?
No, he's not. I'm roaming through the halls. I'll give Rob a little tour while we talk.
This is great. The Drunk Squirrel guys, where you're getting a tour as we're recording the podcast.
Yeah.
Hold on, Debs. What's that bright thing just outside the window?
It's probably my own symbol.
It's the sun, I see.
The sun.
Yes, that is the sun.
What's that?
That is the sun. Well, it's Florida, honey. But yeah, this is
Sorry,
our
Kenny
yoga
and I are
studio.
sitting up here in a storm.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do get a downpour from time to time. But yeah,
I love it. It's a beautiful night for a storm.
Yeah.
this is our 2,100 square foot space we call Studio 228.
Studio 228. I see the actual studio there. You turn it.
Yeah. I'll show you the art gallery real quick. We have an art opening on Thursday.
Very nice.
And so just to kind of, I do want to get back to the Sunday night meltdown last February, Kenny, but after Rind. But this is our new artist, Rainey Mills Turner out of New Orleans.
That's
and she'll
very
be here
cool.
Thursday for our art opening. We do not charge artists to show their work. I'm proud of that.
So Debs, if you will for us, because Nell can pronounce it, but I cannot. Tell us the name of the art gallery, if you will, please.
Yes, I will. Galerie du Sacré-Cœur. Yes. And that's the Gallery of the Sacred Heart. The building we're in is the historic Sacred Heart Hospital. And this is the first art gallery that's in the space. I think the owners were pretty excited about that. But this whole space, it's a little bit larger than what we need. You can see it has a large foyer, has a couple of large closets, a couple of bathrooms. But we do have a separate space just for Sandcastle Radio, which is, so important. We were in a tiny, tiny space for so long, just checking the computer to make sure that the guys ended broadcast. I assume somebody would have let me know if there was dead air by now.
Somebody would have said something.
Somebody would have. But yeah, we had all of this in 250 square feet.
I don't think you have more space than you need.
No, I don't think we do.
Honestly, after being there, I think you have the exact right amount of space.
I think so.
Because you have some room to grow into it a little bit.
Yeah, and truthfully, the night that you were interviewing the Trop Rockers, and I was in the gallery with the kids, and there was a yoga class going on, and we do like to keep the office closed just a little bit because, we do have some, personal paperwork sitting around, things like that, that we don't necessarily want, to be walking out the door accidentally or purposefully or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good space, and I'm proud of it, and I'm happy to be here. I'm very humbled to be here, actually. Again, seemingly total chance is how it happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I was meditating in a ballroom on the other side of the building. My friend Emily has a dance studio, and she offered for me to use it once a week for yoga. And so I advertised a donation-based yoga class that was half yoga and half seated meditation for peace. And it was Thursday mornings, and no one ever came. And so, yeah, every time Pete would be like, "Did anyone come?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I said, "It's okay. It's okay. I sit there and I do my thing, and it's peaceful, and it's all good." And after about 3 months, I think it was 3 months, maybe longer. It might have been, was it 6 months? Anyway, it was more than 3 months and less than 6. I was sitting there, and suddenly I just got up and walked over to this space on the other side of the building. It's a huge building. And I had no reason to. I just felt it. I felt strongly to get up and walk to the other side of the building. And the occupants, the tenants who'd been in here for many years, were leaving. And so it was the first time I'd ever even seen the space, because it was closed to the public for years. So I walked in and I said, "Wow, this is amazing." And I said, what was this? Do you know what this room used to be? The big yoga room. And somebody said, "Oh, it was the healing room. It was the sun porch where patients used to come and heal." And I said, "Oh." So I brought Pete in here.
Yeah.
And he was just open mouthed, like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I know it's crazy. I know we can't afford this. I know this is total insanity, and but I have to open a yoga studio here.
So what was the business in this space before you guys were here?
It'd been a health insurance, some kind of insurance company.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was health insurance. It wasn't it wasn't open to the public. It was a bunch of offices.
Okay.
So the whole beautiful space was sectioned off. In fact, we got rid of all the sectionals. That was the first thing we did, was got rid of all the dividers. But yeah, but many years ago, funnily enough, it was a school of liberal arts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And
crazy.
so it
Yeah.
is crazy because I joke, I'm not really joking. I say often the space will decide what it wants. And it really does. Like, we had an idea that we would off because we do so many salsa events, as you know, and Pete has his salsa show, or Perucine rather.
But yeah, Pete does
We
not
thought,
have a salsa show. Perucine
yes,
has a
Perucine has a salsa. And so we're like, it would make sense to have salsa events, salsa lessons,
yeah.
those kinds of things. And they just didn't pan out. So yeah, it was a school of liberal arts, and I only just found that out. And it's interesting because we are getting ready to launch an after school program in the space. Now, I don't know if that will take or not, but I have a feeling it will. That wasn't part of my original programming. I mean, we really were thinking salsa classes, and we knew yoga, and yoga has really taken off, which has been wonderful. But salsa classes did not. And so we just kind of let that go and looked around for what else might make sense.
Yeah.
It is a very big space. And even though it feels like a community space, and I have to kind of explain this to people, it's not. We're paying for it. So we rent the space, and we do a lot of wonderful community things like donation-based yoga, and an art gallery that doesn't charge artists, and a radio station that's listener supported, and a nonprofit that promotes education about broadcasting and the arts. But at the end of the day, we do have to pay our rent.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about the different sorts of paid activities that we can host in here. One of those is an art market, and I hadn't thought of that either, but that just sort of spontaneously happened and came together. And we have vendors who come and bring their original art, and their baked goods, and their beautiful jewelry, handmade, unique items. And they rent a table from us at a very reasonable price, and 2 Sundays a month. And so that's been really, really successful. So yeah, it's just interesting to see the space wants community. We know that, and we feel that. And so what that looks like as we evolve into other things, I don't know. But when you and Nell were here, and it's when I really saw it shine. I mean, I felt like I saw it at its full potential right in front of me, with all these things happening together simultaneously in the same space. And it was so beautiful.
Yeah, it was an amazing time, and I had some emotional moments when I was there. It's really interesting how that happens, and I can be emotional, Rob. Don't look at me like that.
Yeah, no, it's
adjusted my headphones. Wow.
Well, it's understandable. And I mean, look, the reality is that, you guys have heard about this space for months.
Yeah.
So much so that I was shocked when I realized you hadn't physically been here.
I know, right?
Like, in my mind, the whole team has already been here.
Yeah.
Rind in February was such a pressure cooker for all of us. And we rocked it with zero budget, with no sleep.
That's for sure. That's for sure. So I feel like, Debs, we've hit a lot of good things at this point, and I know you're feeling a certain way and all of those things, but so I feel like we could do a 2-part episode here, but we can record part 2 at another time if you need to let yourself rest.
I think that would probably be good.
Because we didn't touch on, like, I'd like to touch on like the origins of Sandcastle Radio and just that kind of stuff, which we kind of jumped over that thing. That's
Yeah,
stuff
I
a little bit.
apologize. I got a little too ambitious, guys, and I
No.
think
No.
I might be done.
Yeah, let's
Perfectly fine.
We want to thank our guest, Deborah Bassett, for being with us on this episode. As you heard earlier in the episode, she was dealing with an illness, and she abruptly lost her voice at the end of this episode. So we are going to get back with Debs at a later date because we have a lot more to get into about Sandcastle Radio and Studio 228. But until then, thank you for listening to the Drunk Squirrel podcast, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to The Drunk Squirrel. No need to pay a tab. Just be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and drop us a line, thedrunksquirrel82@gmail.com. Cheers.